I've gotten a lot of comments, why did I write an entire book on Mark Driscoll? And is this really an entire book based on a teenage relationship that went bad? And the answer is no, it's not at all. This is about a church forcing minors to sign NDAs. This is about a pastor excommunicating anyone that disagrees with him in the slightest. This is about a megachurch leader using congregant money to 24/7 surveil a 15-year-old and his family. You'll see a lot of people criticize Driscoll. You'll hear about the 40 elders and hundreds of congregants in Seattle that called on Driscoll to step down due to his abusive leadership as pastor of Mars Hill. What's different is I didn't know about Driscoll's past. I didn't know about Mars Hill. I was 15. I walked into this church with my family. It was alive. I wanted to be a part of it, and I became a fan. I enjoyed listening to Driscoll's sermons, and I wanted to get involved. I mean, at the peak of my time at Trinity, you could have told me anything bad about Driscoll or his past, and I would have still defended him. That's how caught up I was in this church. But eventually, I saw things in this church. Serving in the internship, I was under Landon Chase, the son-in-law of Driscoll, a human being so vile that his own family has spoken out against him multiple times. And long before even leaving the church, I was taken into an office by Landon and I was fired from the church internship. Now, why was I fired? Well, I also liked serving in the worship department. I'm a musician, I like playing on stage. To Landon, that was me being disloyal to him because I also wanted to be on stage. And we had many conversations about this where he straight up called me to my face because I liked being on stage playing music over being in what they call the backyard doing heavy lifting and tasks around the yard. And that's when I should have known something was up. At this time, I was starting to date Driscoll's daughter, who was 17, 2 years older than me. And after this happened and I was fired, her and I were forced to stop talking for a few weeks. I was told by her that she had lost so many friends due to disagreements with the church or something that they did that Driscoll, her father, didn't like. And in this situation, she said if I didn't make right with the church and basically apologize to Landon for being disloyal and whatnot, that her and I may never be able to talk again. And it got to the point where my dad had to call a meeting and sit down with Landon Chase and Brandon Anderson, who becomes important later on in the story. And in this meeting, my dad had to remind them, you guys are the adults. This is a 15-year-old kid being treated like this. How do you fire a kid from a church internship because he wants to serve on the worship team and also in the backyard? And keep in mind, at the time, we were still bound, at least we believed we were bound to an NDA that specifically said you cannot share things with your parents. You cannot tell your parents what goes on in this internship. And we believe that. I mean, obviously now I've grown older and, I know that a minor cannot legally enter into an NDA without a parent's consent. At the time, we weren't told that by church staff. We were told, you need to sign this and you can't talk to anyone, including your parents, about what goes on in the church and in this internship. And as I got closer to Driscoll's daughter, I started learning things about Driscoll that I never wanted to know because it kind of shattered my image of who he was as a person. Yet I still wanted to believe that there was actually good in him and he was this great pastor that I thought he was. And eventually it got to a point where I'm not just hearing these things from his daughter. I spent time at Driscoll's house. I had sleepovers because I was friends with his son. I had multiple conversations with him. I had sit downs in his office with him and his wife, Grace, talking about my relationship with his daughter. And, he always wanted to be in the loop with what was going on. And I saw a pattern with him that lined up with things that I eventually learned about his past, is that Driscoll has one way of doing things. It's his way. No other way. Either you do things his way or you're out. That's it. Then the breaking point comes. It's a Wednesday night before the real men's service, as Driscoll calls it. And I'm on stage getting ready. We're doing a rehearsal and I get a tap on my shoulder. It's Brandon Anderson, the executive pastor who is right under Driscoll. And he tells me to come up to his office. Now, the Trinity Church is an old building, so the walls are very hollow. And how the offices are set up, you could hear things from 3 offices down. And where Driscoll's office is, it is 3 offices down. And you can hear all throughout because of how hollow the walls are. Now, Brandon sits me down, he locks the door, he stands in front of the door, and he looks at me, he's towering over me, and I'm sitting there, I'm confused out of my mind, and his face is turning red, and he starts grilling into me, and he starts asking me, have I done anything unbiblical with Mark's daughter? And I tell him, no, I have not done anything unbiblical. I don't know what is going on. He keeps pressing, he's cursing at me, and he asks me if I've ever kissed Mark Driscoll's daughter. And I told him honestly, yes, I have kissed Mark Driscoll's daughter. Now the situation turns and he starts asking questions about sexual relations. And at this point, I am completely uncomfortable. So I ask him, I say, I know Pastor Mark is 3 doors down. I know he can hear all this. Could I please talk to Pastor Mark? Could I go into his office? Could I talk to him about this? This doesn't feel right to talk to you about. So this answers all the questions where people say, why didn't I talk to Driscoll directly? Why didn't I try to go to him? This was just one of the times that I did. And Brandon's response was, well, Pastor Mark sent me here because if he was talking to you, he would punch you in the effing face. That's what I was told by the executive pastor of Trinity Church. And Brandon told me, he told me to pack your shit and leave. So I got my stuff. I went out to the car, and my dad was waiting out there because he was getting ready for the men's service, waiting for it to start. He gets a call from Brandon. Brandon basically tells him, you guys got to leave. Pastor Mark can't preach looking at your face in the crowd, talking to my dad. And my dad was rightfully very upset because he had a conversation earlier with Brandon and Landon where he told them, you are not to put my son in an office one-on-one and talk to him and grill him like you guys did when you fired him. And they blatantly went against what he had asked for. So then my dad gets texts from people on the security team asking what the heck is going on because they're now given orders that the Manueles need to leave the property and can't return. The next day, I get an email from Mark Driscoll's daughter, but it's written by Mark. And in this email, he tells me there's not going to be any more communication with his daughter. And he tells me, do not attempt to post anything online. Now, why did Mark's mind go to do not attempt to post anything online when I'm only 15 years old? It's like he knew what he had done, what Brandon had done, and he was already saying, do not attempt to post anything online because he knew it would not look good for him, the situation that he had put himself in. Now, I'm giving you about 5% of the story of what I can fit in this short video, but what I'm trying to paint is a picture of the control that Driscoll had over his daughter, who was almost an adult, over the people in his church, over minors in the church, over the entire congregation. Driscoll purposely built Trinity so that what happened in Seattle wouldn't happen again. He built it so there would be 0 elders, that he would be at the top, and he would own it like a business. So why did I write this book about Driscoll? And I did it for a cash grab, right? That's what quite a few people have said. But no, I started writing this book in 2022, and it was a letter to Driscoll, essentially, where I wrote out everything that I went through at his church and how betrayed I felt. And it was kind of this angry letter that I would never send to him, but just wanted to write down to get all these stories on paper. But since I already spoken out a little to Julie Roys in 2021, I started receiving hundreds and hundreds, still to this day, of messages of people hurt by Driscoll all the way back to Mars Hill up until recently. People today, as of filming this video, have reached out to me recently, either kicked out of Trinity Church or left due to the insane abusive leadership going on in the church. And these people told me, your story needs to be out there and you have a platform. A lot of these people don't have a platform. And now I'm not huge, I have somewhat of a following on social media, and they said, you need to get your story out there. I came back to it with a different mindset and I restarted from scratch. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna write this for the hundreds of people that I've talked to that went through things worse than me in relation to Driscoll, in relation to Mars Hill and Trinity Church. And I'm gonna write this for them, for those that have either been silenced by legal threats, which Mark likes to do, or silenced because of the attacks by Mark's fan base. And I made them a vow that I would speak up for them by releasing my story on the truth of what really goes down under Mark Driscoll's leadership. And the most important part is, I'm still a Christian. I'm an even bigger Christian now than I was when I was attending Trinity. And this book was written after consulting with mentors and a lot of praying on, is this the right thing to do? And I kept being reminded of Ephesians 5:11, which calls on us to not have anything to do with evil. Not just that, but to expose it, literally expose it. And the original Greek word for expose literally means to fully convict, expose, rebuke, or refute. And the best part about talking to people that have recently left or have been excommunicated by Mark Driscoll and Trinity Church is I get to point them to actual biblical churches and Christ-centered pastors. See, my purpose of writing this book is I have heard from too many Driscoll survivors that have told me they're no longer Christian and they're happy about it. They've deconstructed, they've left the faith because of things they went through in relation to Driscoll. And when I made the decision to write this book, I told myself, if even one person can read this after going through something similar, even if it's not with Driscoll, and say, you know, maybe it was man that hurt me. Maybe it wasn't God. Maybe it wasn't the actual church itself. Maybe I shouldn't turn away. Then my mission is complete. That's why I wrote this book, not as an act of bitterness, not as a rejection of faith, but actually a promotion of faith, is that God is so much greater than these false prophets. God is so much greater than the abusive control Mark Driscoll has over his congregation. And if I can make or assist in one person believing that, then I have fulfilled my goal in releasing this book. So Mark Driscoll, you've sent your threatening legal letters, you've threatened to sue me, you have hired surveillance to follow me around, tried to intimidate me, but that's not getting me to stop. It's only gonna make me louder. This is a story that needs to be told because this is a story with a lot of churches. This is just my experience. And if you're someone who's gone through something similar, I answer all my messages. So if you want to reach out, jump on a phone call, whatever. I love pointing people to actual Christ-centered churches. And as for Kiss and Tell, it's only been out for a couple days and it has been top 100 consistently on Amazon and biographies, and it's been a bestseller on Barnes & Noble. So click the link below and go and get your copy if you want to read the full story of what really went down inside Trinity Church. And if you're a Driscoll fan, I hope you'll have an open mind and really read what this guy is capable of and what he's done. God bless.